Hi, I'm Ann McElhenney.
And I'm Phelim Scoop.
And welcome to the Ann Phelim Scoop.
And that is Scaredy Cat.
Yes, we've just been joined by Scaredy Cat. We're going to do a quick rundown of what we're doing today. So we've got some very nice photographs. For those of you who are listening on just audio, you might want to look at the YouTube because we're putting up pictures from our visit at the White House.
And our meeting with President Trump, which was supposed to be 15 minutes, ended up 45. But this
we'll
is
talk about that.
Hot off the presses. We're also going to talk about President Trump's new chief of staff, Mark Meadows, how we know him and how we know that President Trump is in good hands because Mark Meadows is in the office.
We're also going to talk about the Weinstein verdict and the Weinstein sentencing. We're going to talk about Democrats' relationships with women, crazy California, International Women's Day, and then a couple of movie reviews and a couple of reviews of some stuff on Netflix as well that might be interesting for some people to watch. So that's kind of the rundown. And we're going to start by, last week we talked about our extraordinary meeting at the White House with President Trump. And this week we're able to publish the photographs from that meeting.
From the Oval Office.
So here we are. Here we are looking extremely happy with ourselves, I have to say.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I'm just looking nervous.
And I was thinking one of the things I noticed actually, and you can spot this here, and definitely not me, but just shows you how his mind works. But look at how clean and clear the office desk is. Now, when we went in, there were some papers on the desk.
Yes, which were removed very quickly in case we saw the plans for North Korea or whatever he was dealing with at that stage. Exactly. So I think the desk does be clean because you don't want the visitors to see the top secret plans to assassinate someone.
Anyway, I think we look fabulous. I think we look fabulous. I think the president looks fabulous. We all look really happy with ourselves.
I look like I've just come from buying cattle.
Phelim has that kind of rustic Irish look.
Country squire look, yes.
Exactly.
Or just being down the fields with the hands.
That's right. But interesting, I think one point that we wanted to make about these photographs and just the timing of everything is we went to see the president on the Thursday that CPAC, I think CPAC might have opened even on Wednesday. But it's very important to say this. We were not at CPAC before we met the president.
Yes.
We actually went to the president, and then after that we went to CPAC. So in terms of that one case that they've been talking about with COVID-19 at CPAC, we certainly weren't exposed to anything.
We were not exposed to it.
We didn't expose anything.
And we did not carry it into the Oval Office.
Exactly.
We can confirm that. So
we were really happy, by the way, just to hear about the elevation of Mark Meadows to Chief of Staff. And Phelim, you had a very nice line there. What was it you said?
Integrity is what you do when no one's watching. That's what's really, because everyone can do the right thing when everyone's looking at you, but when no one's watching and no one catch up with you and you do the right thing, that's integrity. And
our example of that then is
Mark Meadows is a man of integrity.
He's a man of integrity. So I don't know where I was. I really can't remember where it was, but I was a keynote speaker at an event a few years back during the time that we were doing the fundraising for the Gosnell movie, and Mark Meadows was also speaking at that event, and we shared a table, and I don't know if I might have sat next to his wife Debbie, but a very nice, a lovely event or whatever, and I got up and spoke about Kermit Gosnell, what he had done, what the story of Kermit Gosnell revealed about abortion, about the reality of abortion in the United States, and I sat down. And, people were chatting and all of that. And then, I think we all got up or whatever. But before very long, Mark Meadows and Debbie Meadows came over to me and discreetly, super discreetly, no one was watching, as you say, give me a check for $500 for the Gosnell movie. So that's something we know about them. Mm-hmm. That's something we know about Mark Meadows. And it struck me, I have to say, here's what struck me about it. And actually, it's a thing that I think is a really positive thing about Mark Meadows. Actually, a very positive thing about Donald Trump.
This is his private money.
This is private money, of course.
It wasn't, wasn't.
No, it's from his personal, his personal
so this
account.
This is a man who probably spent a lot of his career fundraising, himself. These people need money to get re-elected.
But I think he's not a lifetime politician. I think that's actually the point that struck me was that and I'm thinking people out there, think about politicians. I don't know how quickly a lot of lifetime politicians would hand over money like that to somebody in that way. And I have actually subsequently I have met Mark and Debbie Meadows, on many occasions, at public events, and they are Really very, very fine people and people of integrity. And I know people in North Carolina are so proud of him and what's happened here. And I think he's going to be great in the White House. And I just, by the way, and of course the reaction from the left to his to this appointment is unbelievable. Like, here's what Bloomberg, and by the way, what I hate most about this is that Bloomberg, quoting sources,
Yes.
Sources, whatever, it's quoting sources. How does a small town real estate developer with an associate's degree get to be a chief of staff? What hateful, horrible elitists.
Yeah.
What hateful, horrible people. And by the way, real estate agents, by the way, my God.
Real estate.
Developer, yeah. Do you get a few life skills when you along the way if you're a developer of land, like in Florida? I think.
You have to know 5 years in advance what people are going to want 5 years from now. You have to give it to them in a way that they can afford. You have to deal with people from electricians to lawyers to town officials. It's who would do that job?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing job. It's a terrible job being a real estate developer.
And by the way, the same person who wrote that, or those sources, but they thought it was okay then for a commander-in-chief to be somebody who had been in the past a community organizer, a person with a law degree who never practiced law. I mean... And
a one-term senator.
Yeah, but there was no problem with that.
But this man, Mark Meadows, has had
he's had a life.
A life, yeah. And then he went into politics.
Yeah.
And now he's, it's... yes, it's just part of the...
Yeah, exactly. Just dreadful, just dreadful. But as we said, we think it's great. We think it's great that Mark Meadows has gotten this job. We want to talk about the Weinstein verdict next because actually, and some of you guys wrote on Facebook, on YouTube about this, that we hadn't talked about it the last time, but it was actually just a timing
issue.
A timing issue.
The verdict happened after we recorded, and then it was too late, and things got away from us. So Weinstein was convicted of various charges, not the most serious, and not he was, but I think, and the word on the street is, and the word in the court is, that's not going to matter, that he's going to get such a severe sentence at his time of life and with his medical conditions that it will be effectively a life sentence.
And for people who want to hear the whole of the sentencing, for example, and actually, the whole of the verdict, you can go to WeinsteinPodcast.com and look. We have an episode devoted to that with actors reenacting all the parts with the lawyers and all of those people speaking.
And we also put in context what he was convicted of and what he wasn't convicted of. I'm going to give a brief description of that. So he was convicted of a first degree criminal sex act for the assault on former Project Runway production assistant Miriam Haley inside his Soho apartment in 2006, and third degree rape for the assault of former actress Jessica Mann. He was cleared of first-degree rape, and the most serious charges against him, as Phelim says, the 2 counts of predatory sexual assault, which carried with them the maximum sentence, which was a life sentence. He was not convicted of those crimes. And I think people were asking us, what did we think? What did we think of the verdict? And I think we were really shocked. For any skeptical journalist who sat through the trial and heard the evidence and heard from the witnesses, for me it was a stretch, a stretch way too far to convict him on anything criminal. I think for sure he's a cad. For sure he's someone who has taken advantage in the worst possible way, by the way, of his power. For sure. Yep. But I don't believe he did anything that rose to the level of criminal. And it's... and I'll just for those of you who don't know, and people have asked on YouTube about this, so I do want to just say a couple of things. For me, the idea that you could be raped by someone who then you would write to and ask that you would want them to meet your mother, that you could be raped by somebody who then you would ask to come to your birthday party, that you could be raped by somebody who then you would write hundreds of emails to, which you signed off saying lots of love you, miss you, big guy, and all that kind of phraseology. And in the other case, in the case of Miriam Haley, that you could be raped by somebody and the following day take a flight paid for by that person to visit a friend in Los Angeles, come back directly from that, and almost as your first port of call, go and see your rapist and have consensual sex, and then ask your rapist if he would pay for a flight for you to London. And when you're in, and take that flight and stay in a nice hotel in London. And when you're in London in the nice hotel, write to your rapist and say,
oh my God, I've just discovered that you're coming to London next week. I'm going to try and change my flight so that I'm here when you're here. Bummer. I'm so disappointed. In this world that they've created through this verdict, women basically have no choice at all. Women are trapped. So even these women, they were in one case, like this woman, she's in Germany. Like she's in Germany, but she feels apparently compelled to write to her rapist and say that she, miss you and love you.
Send him a picture.
And send a picture and all of this kind of thing. And I talked to a friend of mine, a psychiatrist, and actually she made a really good point. And she quoted Viktor Franklin, and I think it's brilliant. So Viktor Franklin, as many people will remember, who ended up in Auschwitz and survived. And he said he survived because he made choices, and that people, no matter how awful things are, no matter how terrible things are, there is freedom in making choices. And the one that the quote is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And his choice actually was that he would live, that he would stay alive for his wife. And he wasn't sure that she was alive, but that he loved her so much that he wanted to be alive for her. And that if she was already dead, he was going to live because he wanted to help other people. And I just think, I think there's something very bad. For me, I felt there was something terrible about the verdict in the sense that it puts women, it puts people who are accused of rape in an extraordinary position, because it seems to me like you can have any kind of relation with the person that you've had that you say has raped you, and nothing at all will ever prove it didn't happen.
You can relabel you can now go back 10 years, and these women went back 10 years and said, yeah, I had a relationship with him, but this incident was rape and that incident was rape. But they didn't tell him at the time.
Yeah.
They didn't tell anyone at the time. And it's just this relabeling. It's now, you can look back when Weinstein got all that bad publicity, people knew that they had a relationship with him. And so suddenly it was a non-consensual relationship according to them. It's
in one case, the details are incredible, and I would ask people, urge people to go and listen to the Weinstein podcast
at WeinsteinPodcast.com.
Over 250,000 people have listened so far, and it's been like in the top we're top 30 in Australia and the top 50 in the UK, I think,
and we're in the top 70 true crime podcast in the United States. We'd really like to get it up further, and if you go there, please leave a rating, a star rating, and leave a comment. We're very interested in what people say.
And so later today,
just to explain, actually, the Weinstein podcast is it's a verbatim reenactment of some of the most dramatic times of the trial. So every day we would get the transcript and pick out the juiciest exchanges, the most interesting exchanges, the most dramatic exchanges, and arguments and fights, and have them reenacted by voice actors in LA, and we would then comment on it. And it's a new genre. It's the verbatim podcast genre. It's a new way of covering the news.
And it's really compelling.
And it really brings it home to you. And I think anyone who listens to that, to use a phrase, probably will have reasonable doubt about this conviction.
Yes.
We're recording this just before the verdict, or just before the sentencing. The general belief is that he's going to get the book thrown at him. Like the prosecution, did you see the prosecution sentencing memo? Where basically they list 16 other alleged sexual assaults. I mean, it's unbelievable. They're trying to have him sentenced for things he has not been convicted of,
and that he never got a chance to defend himself
to contest in court. It's a complete reversal. Actually, you remember in the old days, you weren't the defense used to be able to bring up a woman's past sexual history to discredit her, and of course you're not allowed to do that now. And I suppose rightly so, but you're allowed to bring up not his past sexual history, his alleged past sexual history. So the pendulum has swung in one direction. If you believe in due process, if you believe in the rule of law, you should listen to the Weinstein podcast. You may not feel sympathetic to Harvey Weinstein as a person or as a political figure or as a filmmaker, but if you believe in the rule of law, if you believe in due process, you should be concerned about the Harvey Weinstein trial. So yes, apparently he faces between 10 and 29 years in prison. Is that correct?
I think the minimum. I think it's between 5 and 29 years in prison. But I mean, the way it appears to us, I think it looks like he's going to die in prison.
Yeah, I was reading about it in New York. The parole is you have to serve 7/8 of your sentence. So I think it's 10 years. It's basically 10 years. Yeah. So and the talk is he'll get more than that. So this is, as I say, listen to the Weinstein podcast. Please leave a comment, leave a star rating. Go on the YouTube for this podcast, for the AP Ann Phelim Scoop. Leave a comment there.
We can write to you.
We can. Unfortunately, we can't write to you on the podcast comment section, but we can write to you on the comment section of YouTube.
But obviously I'm involved in it, but it was Phelim's idea, and it's really a smart and brilliant idea, and it's super entertaining, super compelling. And for those people, it's interesting when you're out and about and people mention Weinstein and how many people have opinions. And actually, a lot of conservatives who have had decided before the case even started that the guy was guilty. Which is very disappointing, actually, that people would do that, and wouldn't believe in due process. I think have a listen to all of what happened in court, and you might have another idea on it. And as we said, we'll be updating on the Weinstein podcast with the sentencing. So moving right along, as we all know now, the Democratic field has shrunk, and I think next weekend there'll be another debate, and I think this debate, it's gone from this huge stage, it's going to be two, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's down
and then
to
there
two.
were two.
And then there were two. But it's interesting
and two. I was going to say middle-aged white men. No. Is that elderly?
No, that's elderly. I think I don't know what the definition of elderly is, but I think it's correct to say that these guys are elderly. And I think you were bringing up the thing which everyone's talking about, which is amazing. What was it you said, Phelim?
I read it. If Pete Buttigieg runs for president in 2060, he will be younger than everyone running for president now.
Isn't that amazing? And that if
Bill
Clinton
was to run
now with these guys, he'd be younger than any of them. It's incredible, And I think
by the way, I remember when we first came to America, and we were brought up in this, America is the land of youth, and California where youth is worshipped and all this. And you often get that, actors and news anchors saying, I was pushed out for a young woman. It's like, no. Have you looked at your TV screens recently? Yeah. Like have you looked at your politics? I mean, old people are everywhere on TV.
And in politics, huge. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, I don't know what age she is, but she's not. She's elderly. She's elderly,
yes.
But good for her, by the way. I think it's great. I'm all in favour of it. I think, keep on rocking on.
But so we don't have any more women left now. We don't have.
But I kind of want to just take a moment, because I think when you think that the Democrat Party, they are obsessed with identity politics. It's them that's obsessed with it, right? They're into the identity politics. The Conservatives are not into the identity politics at all. So they had Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, Marianne Williamson, Elizabeth Warren, Tulsi Gabbard, and Kirsten Gillibrand.
I forgot about her.
I know. It's funny how I looked at a set of photographs, and we're putting up photographs of all of these women now, and I was looking at some of them and I was thinking, okay, who's that now? Where you didn't know.
Kirsten Gillibrand ran for president?
Yeah, it's not interesting. Yeah, and Phelim's looking at me like he needs to fact check that. No, she did run for president, Phelim.
I have a vague memory of that.
But it's very interesting that the party who really are obsessed with, believe all women and all this kind of stuff and whatever, right? And identity politics and how important it is that women have representation. When the Democrats had a chance to show us unwashed, uncivilized conservatives who don't value women, when they had a chance to really put it up to us, and they had these wonderful candidates and a massive number of candidates. And this is the Democrat primary. These are the elite Democrat voters, the dedicated. These are the elite of the elite. Of the Democrats. These are the best of them.
Yes. And these are the people who are going to decide the next president, and these are the wokest of the woke.
They're the wokest of the woke, and they're the progressivist of the progressivist. And to me, it's like, I don't think a lot of people are talking about this, but I find it just extraordinary that when they're left to their devices, they choose who they think is best, not who they think has the right identity.
They force quotas on the rest of us.
Yes,
but when they get into a ballot box,
that's a very good point.
And when they give money online, they give it to two
elderly white guys.
men.
Elderly white guys. And they abandon, I mean, Kamala Harris, lawyer, a woman of colour, as they say, I think, and all that. Amy Klobuchar, Marianne Williamson.
Elizabeth Warren, a lawyer, woman of colour.
Phelim, stop it.
Namaste.
You really have to stop that now. But it's very interesting. And I think the thing that struck me...
I was going to vote for
Marianne Williamson.
Warren, but I had my reservations. He
really needs to stop that now. Yeah. It's not the first race she had to leave.
Okay,
I stole that. I actually stole that. I stole that. That's from Twitter. That's what is good about Twitter. I'm going to be talking a bit more about Twitter after this. But here's the really funny thing, right? So conservatives don't believe at all in identity politics, right? It's a big thing with conservatives. We don't believe in identity politics. Allegedly. But here's what happens, though. Conservatives elect women. And conservatives have always elected women. And conservatives have always elected women to the highest possible offices available. So here's the one. So Margaret Thatcher, and I just looked this up because it really is something just worth pausing on, right? She was the Prime Minister of Great Britain.
So I just want to say, for all you middle-aged people out there, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of Britain, because you don't remember this because it was so far back. So
she was the Prime Minister for how long, Phelim?
11 years?
I think it was 11 years. And she was the leader of the Conservative Party from 1975 to 1990. So the leader... So this is Britain, by the way.
And by the way, listen to this one. Listen to this one. Telling me about Margaret Thatcher.
Love of his life.
This one.
That's the one who he's talking about. Go on ahead there.
One of us, because they grew up in British-occupied Northern Ireland.
Oppressed statelet.
Which was...
not that he's bitter at all.
Which you guys ran away from.
Not even slightly.
You guys deserted us in 1921.
We're not going over that today.
Yes. So one of us was actually reared and had their most formative
Moving
years
right
under Margaret Thatcher.
Correct.
I know the years Margaret Thatcher was in power.
All right.
So anyway, for the rest of you, she was elected leader of the Conservative Party in 1975. She became Prime Minister in 1979, and she was forced from office in 1990. 11 years, one of the most longest serving British Prime Ministers.
And this is Britain, by the way. This isn't America, all new modern America. Yeah. This is Britain, fuddy-duddy. Britain with their fuddy-duddy conservatives.
And in case you think it's a freak, then they elected Theresa May,
which nobody
remember her. Nobody will ever remember her.
No, they won't, in fairness now, and it's nothing to do with her being a woman.
Yes, but she was Prime Minister of Britain for a while as well. So they've had two women Prime Ministers in Britain. Angela Merkel in Germany.
And Angela Merkel in Germany. And by the way, Angela Merkel, I just looked this up because it really is shocking. And don't look at my screen, Phelim. How long do you think Angela Merkel has been the Chancellor of Germany? Because by the way, it's
forever.
Here's the one thing I know now that I didn't know earlier today. They don't have term limits, and they mustn't have term limits in Germany. So she has been the Chancellor of Germany since 2005. Right?
That's a long time.
15 years, right? And I think she's a woman, right, Phelim? She's a woman, right?
She's totally a woman. Yes.
By the way, and those are two countries, right?
East Germany remember East German athletes? There was all these debates. Are they really women?
But basically, Angela Merkel and Margaret Thatcher and Theresa May. No, let's not talk about that at all. But I have to say, I just love this, and I know it's a little bit dated, this, but it's worth. If you haven't heard this, we're going to give you this, the pleasure of this. So Chelsea and Hillary Clinton, of course, wrote their fabulous book, because Chelsea knows so much about just about everything.
Yes,
they wrote their book called Gutsy Women, about women.
Gutsy Women from History.
Gutsy Women from History, and they were doing their world tour,
their book
tour, and they ended up in England, and the BBC got a hold of them, and they got to be interviewed on a BBC, I think it's BBC Radio 4 interview. And you know what? I'm not even going to, I'm not going to intro this at all. I'm just going to say, let's have a little listen and a little watch of this gorgeous little interview.
I think it's quite striking from a British perspective going through this book that, as I understand, in case I've made a terrible error here, you haven't included Margaret Thatcher. Was there a row about that? Did you think to include her? Because surely she comes to mind with gutsy woman, even if you didn't like her.
Well, she does, but she doesn't fit the other part of the definition, in our opinion, which really is knocking down barriers for others and trying to make a positive difference. I think the record is mixed with her. But I think on the criterion that we were really looking at, what were the positive differences, the changes that this person made that really opened doors to more? That wasn't that apparent.
So it's the idea that she didn't promote women around her. For instance, in the cabinet, as one point there, like the drawbridge coming
right.
behind.
I mean, there was very little interest apparently in doing that, and also, her view of politics and her dismissal of the idea even of community. There is no such thing. It really struck me as being out of step with where we need to go. What kind of country? What kind of future we want for our good friends here in the UK.
Let's definitely come on to that. Yes. But I was, Chelsea, it comes back to that whole thing. You can't be what you can't see. And I grew up knowing there had been a female prime minister. So I suppose it's a debatable point, isn't it?
So they really have they have basically no explanation how it is that they're not going to celebrate somebody as gutsy as Margaret Thatcher. Very weak answers.
Yeah. So it's just part of this whole pattern of. We have to get very upset that Elizabeth Warren was forced out, not because almost every aspect of her life is a lie. Was her fake biography was, even parts of her fake biography were fake.
Yeah.
They were fake on fake. She was a fake Indian. She said she was fired for being pregnant. Every aspect of her life that she's used as a reason for running turned out to be fake.
And and the thing I really think is extraordinary and didn't get enough coverage at all is this kind of stolen valor thing, where she stole a valuable commodity, right? That wasn't available to everyone, right? So there was a commodity, there was jobs for minorities at Harvard or whatever. Yes. That was a job to be filled by a minority, and she stole it.
Yes.
So somebody who was actually a genuine minority, who might have genuinely had some difficulties through racist problems or whatever, an actual person like that lost that job for the whiter than whitest of whitest people, Elizabeth Warren, who has never known discrimination in her whole life. So she stole that. And I think that's a huge thing. And for me, that was really significant for me. That Bernie Sanders hasn't stolen. He hasn't. I think everything he says is terrible. But he didn't. You know what I mean? He didn't steal someone's chance in life.
Elizabeth Warren was just a bad politician too. Yeah. She had this thing where I have a plan for that, which actually was okay, right? And I think that's when she was up high in the polls. But then she realized she was in an awkward place between the moderation of Biden and the radicalism of Sanders, and she decided to go radical and went ultra radical and had this transgender town hall at LBG town. Remember that, where she said to this 9-year-old, I'm gonna allow you to veto 9-year-old transgender boy, a 9-year-old transgender, and the parent of the transgender boy standing right behind. It's like, we know, as somebody says, having a transgender child, it's a bit like Scaredy and we can say Scaredy and Top, our cats, are vegetarian. They may not eat meat, but we know who's making the choice, right? Yeah. So if you've got a transgender child, they may say, I want to be a girl or I want to be a boy now, but we all know who's actually making that choice, who's pushing that choice, who's controlling that. So Elizabeth Warren became all woke, became all radical, and was fake, because you can't fake Bernie's enthusiasm. You can't beat Bernie's genuine belief in socialism. Yeah. And so there was no road for her. So the electorate didn't want this fake person who's a fake Indian.
But they didn't want any of the women, by the way. So they didn't want any of the women. So the women and the most wokest party and all that, and all the identity politics people chose to get rid of all of the women.
Yes, so then we're supposed to feel terrible about this and we're supposed to examine our conscience. But, I just want to say a little name. Yes. Sarah Palin.
There's a name.
Sarah Palin, woman who received dogs abuse.
Oh my God.
Complete dogs abuse.
Amazing.
And a lot of it, and I'm not one to say this, but a lot of it was rooted in sexism, But or maybe it wasn't, but let me tell you, she got the most abuse of any female politician in my lifetime that I can remember.
I was going to say in living memory.
And nobody is saying we're not. There's no, the media doesn't bring this thread of abuse of female politicians. And I genuinely, have you ever seen the movie Game Changer? It's a truly terrible movie.
God, it's
terrible. I genuinely fantasize about giving a speech in Hollywood somewhere or in front of actors or something like that and saying, I'm pointing to all the people involved in Game Changer and saying, how do you feel, Tina Fey and all those people, how do you feel about being part of this, a nice friendly interview, how do you feel about being part of a movement that drove a woman from public life? she suffered so much abuse. She was driven from public life.
And by the way, and you know that she's recently, there's a recent story that she's getting divorced. The toll that she took, the personal toll she took for trying to do something in public office was an unbelievable price she paid.
So
we have a crazy California story, kind of a funny, kind of a weird version of a crazy California story, but it's kind of an interesting one because you know what they say, whatever California comes up, whatever crazy, ridiculous ideas California comes up with, be careful, that it might be coming your way soon. So AB5 film, tell us what it is.
Well, as the Los Angeles Times
helpfully
put in a recent headline, new California labor law AB5 is already changing how businesses treat workers, and yes, it is. It's leading to businesses firing their workers. So AB5 is an assault on the so-called gig economy, and so this Congresswoman decided, we're going to pass this law, and gig workers are now going to become employees. She forgot to ask gig workers. It's basically what they thought, it's to help unions, and it's to have more employees, and it's to help incumbent industries like taxi drivers, all those people who have bought the Democrats and have paid for them. So you are not allowed now to basically be an independent contractor for a business if you and it's there was a court decision first, and it said, if you do the same business as them, if you're regularly working for them, then you have to be an employee. And this is, for example, a yoga instructor.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
At a yoga studio now has to become a full-time employee. But so the yoga studio can't afford that. But also, people are getting fired. Like Vox Media, which is the wokest of the woke, the leftist of the left, they had to fire 200 freelance journalists.
Oh my God.
Because if you write more than 35 articles a year for an outlet, you have to be become a full-time employee.
35 a year?
Yeah, and it's like...
Oh God, yeah.
And the freelance journalists don't want that. And you know who it's affecting the most is actually women. There's a lot of women who part-time writers, part-time yoga instructors, and part-time Uber drivers and Lyft drivers and Instacart drivers. So it's destroying, and actually another part of the world that it's really affected is the theatre community, that I know somewhat. Mm-hmm. I don't have much respect for them. They've treated me like something, I don't know. They have no interest in outside ideas or opinions. But their own people have brought in this law now that means that they're having to cancel gigs, they're having to cancel events, festivals. Theatre. And like, for example, let me get this up here. Yeah, so AB5 hit us like a ton of bricks, said Christian Labano, the artistic director of the Sierra Madre Playhouse. And then there's a picture of him standing very sad by a poster of Charles Webb.
Cancelled.
And cancelled. And then on January 28th, Sierra Madre cancelled its annual youth production. 9 school districts had booked seats for the March adaptation of Charlotte's Web, with 2,600 children, along with 400 teachers and parents planning to attend.
Unbelievable.
But paying actors another personal minimum wage and overtime for 6 weeks of rehearsals and 46 performances, along with the new payroll taxes and other employees' costs, would have added $38,000 to a $52,000 budget.
Oh God! Right.
So they cancelled it, and it's happening. The North Hollywood's Deaf West Theatre, which offers plays in sign languages, has been hit as well. They're firing people all over, and it's costing them an enormous amount of money to comply. But I actually, there's all these Facebook groups now, and it's all leftist activists who are suddenly realizing my job, my side gig. It's creatives as well. Creatives who have side gigs, creatives who work part-time in a studio or, trying to do their art, who are being really badly affected. And Lorena Gonzalez, she's the congresswoman or the state representative who passed this law, who pushed this law. And, and I'm going to ban this phrase. I'd love to, if I could ban one phrase from talking about this story, is people talk about the law of unintended consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Unintended consequences.
Yeah, unintended consequences.
And it's like, actually, did you ever think it might be intended consequences? That that this is to get rid of people working. This is to get more control over workers and their lives, which the Democrats really like. And this is to protect unionized industries. The mass sackings and the mass firings are the intended consequences, not the unintended consequence. And I just want to say, Lorena, this is from the New York Times. Gonzalez, the AB5 author, is refusing to, so some professions have got a carve out and they're not covered by this, but she's not offering a carve out for performing arts groups. But earlier this month, she and other legislators proposed a one-time 20 million state budget appropriation for grants to small arts organisations, quote, that make a good faith effort to comply with AB5.
Oh, God.
So they're going to control the arts now.
Yep.
So if you...
I'm sure you're going to do really well on those grants.
If I set up a theatre down the road now and tried to run with Ferguson and FBI Lovebirds and tried to comply with AB5 and found it difficult and costly and applied for this grant, there's no way they're going to give it to me.
No.
So
more control,
it's
more
government
control. Yeah.
And it's more put costs on them and say, we can help you with your costs if you do what we want. So they're controlling the arts. And are the artists out marching? Are they out protesting? Some of them are. Most of them are just going to take the money because they're happy. But by the way, be very careful, because the revolution eats its own. And you'll if you put
They're coming for you next.
If you put on anything edgy, I mean, they've banned the vagina monologues now. Women doing in places in England, women doing the vagina monologues because it's hurtful to transgenders. Right, so you cannot win. You cannot win, and if you take this money and if you allow AB5 to go ahead and you're an arts organisation, they're coming for you also. So
in other news, we've just had, which I know Phelim you celebrate every year, and it's a big day for Phelim, is International Women's Day.
It's a huge
day. Basically, everything comes to a complete standstill around here.
I sit on the chair and reflect.
Phelim
the whole
does.
day.
That's right. Yeah. It's like, enough. So basically on Twitter, and by the way, I don't know how many of you are on Twitter, but Twitter, it's bad and sometimes it's beautiful and glorious and fabulous. And there are some total rock stars on Twitter. And James Woods, who was temporarily suspended on Twitter, is back and he's a prince. But Greta Thunberg, our favourite little teenager, who's getting older, by the way, I think she's 17 now. It's quite funny, actually. Of course, as Magda, as we know, because of Eric, we see that. These children, they grow, apparently, But basically, on International Women's Day, Greta said, today is International Women's Day, and we recognise that women are still far from equal to men in today's societies. We cannot have climate justice without gender equity. And remember, what we women want today and every day is equality, not congratulations or celebrations. So luckily, James Woods was hanging around Twitter when this nonsense came up. And basically, he responded with, one single right men have over women. Just for the record, women on average have more rights and government grants in America than men do, he said. And then in a follow-up tweet, he said, there's not one single right afforded to men in America that is denied to women, except the lovely privilege of being drafted and killed in war based solely on one's sex. And then hashtag International Women's Day. Phelim, will you break it down for us? What's climate justice? Because we can't have climate justice, Phelim, without gender equity.
Climate justice. It's amazing. The solution to the climate change crisis completely tallies with what leftists have been trying to do for decades. And it's funny that it's not funny, but I mean,
I just think it's just providential.
Wouldn't that make anyone suspicious? So the left have been anti-fossil fuels. They've been anti-American big corporations. They've been anti-ExxonMobil for decades, anti-Chevron, anti all these people. And suddenly there's a thing called the climate crisis, and the villains are the villains like America that the left have had for decades, and the big corporations that the left have had for decades. They're the villains, and the way to solve the crisis is to give more power to leftists and strip power from corporations.
And also, I think at all of those climate change conferences, where the big fighting starts is just how much redistribution of wealth happens from rich countries to poor countries, ostensibly to mitigate against the worst problems that'll be, happening with sea level rise and all of this kind of thing. But basically, it's a massive redistribution of wealth program and giving, despots and people with the worst possible
human rights
records,
and
giving them oogles amounts of money,
taking money from poor people in rich countries and giving it to rich people in poor countries.
I think it's an awful shame that Greta Thunberg, a couple of things that she's missing out on doing is highlighting, for example,
going to school is one of them, actually.
Yeah, she really, and you know what, it's clearer every day that there is a massive educational gap there in her thinking. Yes. So she doesn't seem to know that the geography of the planet, doesn't realize that there's this massive country called China that is creating more pollution than just about anywhere else. And yet she's not directing all of her attacks on the Chinese. She's talking about International Women's Day. And she, again, doesn't mention by name, for example, China, that had the most horrific policy, the one-child policy. How do you think they achieved the one-child policy, Greta? How do you think they managed that in China, Greta, to have a one-child policy? What do you think happened, Greta?
Would there be forced abortions
Would there be forced abortions, Greta?
And forced removal of children from their mothers.
And Greta, would there be anywhere else in the world, for example, where there might be a situation where women, for example, mightn't be able to drive a car just because they're women, Greta? And have you named them Greta and shamed them, Greta? Just asking for a friend.
# International Women's Day.
# International Women's Day. Yeah, we're thinking of, incredible.
Well, now let's do the movie section. Now, we haven't seen this movie.
I want to tell you a
story. So we're driving along the other day.
We were.
And
in the Hollywood Hills.
Listening to,
as we do,
NPR.
Which we do for you. Because we are willing to go there for you. Yes, this is
a sacrifice we make for you. And there's a movie review program on. And,
my God.
And next thing they talk, and after the break, we'll be reviewing the St. Francis movie. And Anne goes, there's a movie about St. Francis.
It's true. Phelim was like, joke, because I kind of went, oh God, that's lovely. And I thought, wouldn't that be lovely, And I actually genuinely, I was thinking, wouldn't it be lovely now if somebody's gone ahead and made like an amazing movie about St. Francis? And by the way, It makes all the sense in the world that you would, by the way, because St. Francis, you talk about environmentalist
and animals, loves animal rights. That's rather popular, I believe.
And rather popular, and he was saint and all that. And so I did this, right? So here we go, right? So first of all, I have to read this from the Hollywood Reporter. So here is what St. Francis is about.
Hey, I think you might be on your period. There's a little bit of blood.
A lot of blood.
The milk is...
I'm for sure getting rid of it.
Okay.
When you were a baby and you screamed and screamed and there was nothing I could do to get you to stop, I'd imagine taking you by the ankles and swinging your little head into the wall over and over until it was a bloody pulp.
Oh my God. I don't know that you should tell that story.
I'm throwing out the milk, the olives got old. I'm tired of my mind getting heavy with mold.
I'm brave! I'm brave! I'm the coolest! I'm the coolest!
Cause making this song up is just as hard.
And of course, we're told by NPR, and we've read reviews since, and the premise of the movie is that
St. Francis
is there's a nanny who is the nanny to a 6-year-old who's the daughter of 2 lesbian women, and the nanny finds her humanity by bonding with the 6-year-old,
friendship with the 6-year-old,
and it becomes this kind of friendship movie, and then suddenly, because it's Hollywood, they want to get their message in, and it just slaps you in the face. So you're going to read the Hollywood Reporter review parts of it, Anne.
Here's the part of the Hollywood Reporter review. The termination of an unplanned pregnancy and a job nannying a precocious 6-year-old girl prompt a directionless young woman to recalibrate her notions of family in Alex Thompson's first feature.
It's quite a recalibration, actually.
I'm not an impressive...
abortion.
Oh, my God. I mean, but reading this review in the Hollywood Reporter and realising what this story is all about, just the way they write, the matter-of-fact way they write. And by the way...
It's deliberate. It's
totally deliberate. I mean, we talked before about the fact that Planned Parenthood are going to spend, I think it's $35 million this year on the election. And in amongst all that money that's being spent, they have Karen Spruce, who we talked about before. They have a woman dedicated to working in Hollywood to work with scriptwriters to normalize abortion. That's what her thing is. So I'm just curious. I would curiously suggest going out on a limb here that perhaps she was involved with this one. I'm not an impressive person, says screenwriter and lead actor Kelly O'Sullivan, as the emotionally untethered Bridget toward the end of St. Francis. I don't have a husband or kids or a fancy job. Those standard markers that define life fulfillment for many women are held up for gently ironic questioning in Alex Thompson's slender but appealing debut feature, of note for its non-judgmental stance on abortion and its normalising treatment of queer parenting. Though not immune to occasional heavy-handedness, I bet.
Yes.
I bet.
When the Hollywood Reporter says not immune to occasional heavy-handedness,
warning.
You know that you're getting smacked over the head with a really heavy hand, several heavy hands.
A woke hand.
Yeah, but it's a heavy
woke hand.
A very heavy woke hand.
There you go, the heavy woke hand of Hollywood culture. Yeah. The occasional heavy-handedness or caricature.
I wonder who they would be caricaturing.
Who would you think they'd caricature now?
Would they be caricaturing the lesbians as sort of the angry lesbian?
No. Funny enough, because I read in another part of this review they're not.
No.
That apparently they meet someone in Chicago who's right-wing nut job, basically, who has All Lives Matter posters everywhere.
And is really a nasty person.
And is a really nasty person.
They're caricaturing a conservative or a right-wing person. That's a shocker that they choose one person, because all the rest is subtly, everyone's subtly drawn, the character's subtly drawn, except the people who don't agree with their life view. And then they are faced with caricature.
But I mean, just listen to some of this bit. So the guy that she gets pregnant with, I think his name is Jace. But so listen to this. Faced with an unplanned pregnancy, she doesn't hesitate in choosing an abortion, resisting Jace's tentative efforts to talk through other options. Just as Bridget is feeling like a failure for not having figured out what to do with her life, this clever, curious, intuitive kid, and so then of course that's all the stuff about the child and all that. While the abortion is treated matter-of-factly, without a trace of melodrama, Bridget deals with physical after effects for many weeks. Jace, the father of said child that is now dead, by contrast, that's me, that was my voice, that's not the Hollywood Reporter, right? Yeah. So Jace, by contrast, keeps an emotional journal. I actually thought this was really sad reading this, and I haven't even seen the movie. Jace, by contrast, so the father of the child that has been aborted, keeps an emotions journal full of unprocessed feelings that he tries to get her to discuss. This gives rise to an amusing joke about millennials having too many feelings.
I mean, so this is very funny. So these adult movies are supposed to be full of emotion and stretching your emotions and all. But when there's one character who does want to stretch emotions, they go for the cheap joke instead.
Yeah. So. And basically, I mean, if you look at as we said, we haven't seen the film, but this is the Hollywood Reporter writing, who would be very sympathetic, and they love the film. And by the way, it's won every kind of award available.
It won Sundance and Berlin.
Yeah. So they couldn't love this more, and it's going to be everywhere. And I think it's really interesting that, I mean, to me, it's extraordinary that they've written this. It's almost, there's almost a Babylon Bee kind of onion feel to it. Mm-hmm. But the guy is so irrelevant. First of all, they mentioned that she won't talk to him about her decision. She won't even allow him to have a gentle conversation. And then when he has emotions about what's happened, about his first child probably in the world who has died, like when he has emotions about that, it becomes a joke. It's a joke, actually. She makes a joke of it. She makes a joke of his emotions. God, aren't women lovely? Haven't women turned out lovely, though, seriously? Haven't the wokeness now made them all gorgeous and lovely? But then I went up on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's worth going. Now, the film hasn't been released generally yet, but already on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 97% approval rating from critics, including everyone. Here's the New York Times, I couldn't love it more, of course, with a warm heart and a non-judgmental mind, because non-judgmental, very, very important.
Very important.
St. Francis weaves abortion, same-sex parenting, and postpartum depression into a narrative bursting with positivity and acceptance. And by the way, who has the postpartum depression?
Probably one of the people that she's nannying.
that she's nannying for. Okay.
Another negative
Here's
thing.
another one, Variety. Turns out there are a lot of things that have gone unsaid in movies until now. And St. Francis goes there in a way that's not only enlightening but entertaining as well. And can I say, by the way, I'd like to flip that on its head and say, yeah, there's a lot of things that are unsaid in movies, and that's one of the things that we're most proud about the movie Gosnell, because that we said things that no one had ever said before, using verbatim testimony of the trial of Kermit Gosnell, where we had an abortion doctor describe an actual abortion, which I would still throw out the challenge to anyone if they know of any film ever made prior to this, prior to our movie, that did that. But all these reviews are terrible.
I don't remember the New York Times reviewing Gosnell.
And I don't remember the New York Times reviewing Gosnell, you know. Yeah. But I mean, I won't read all the reviews, but it's extraordinary to me how loved this film is. And as you said, they couldn't give it enough prizes.
Yeah.
They just can't give it enough prizes. We, unfortunately, Phelim, will have to go and see it.
Yes,
I'm just saying that. We want to make 2 quick other recommendations before we finish.
Actually,
on the entertainment front.
I am about to go this afternoon to see The Hunt, which is debuting this weekend. And I'll be posting a review of it on townhall.com. So go there. I suspect, I know that various commentators were outraged at The Hunt, which is basically liberals chasing down deplorables and trying to kill them. But I suspect, and I think from the trailer it's quite clear, that it's a classic Hunt premise. And these movies have been around for decades, where the hunted becomes the hunter, and the elites who are hunting them underestimate the intelligence of the hunted, and it becomes the script is flipped. So I would actually think it's probably a movie every conservative should be, to watch some elites get their comeuppance. But I'm holding back my judgment. I'm going to be posting a review on townhall.com on Wednesday, and you can also find it probably on Twitter, my review. So keep an eye out for that.
I actually wanted to really quickly talk about Dirty John, which really interesting, by the way. So it's a podcast that I would highly recommend. If you had to get in a car and go somewhere now, I'd recommend the podcast Dirty John. Amazing story. We just happened to listen to it by kind of accident the other day. We were in the car and we realized it's going to take us an hour to get home. And I thought, oh my God, let's listen to a podcast. So we listened to Dirty John. We got so fascinated by Dirty John that when we came home, we started watching the program,
the
series on Netflix, the Dirty John series on Netflix.
Not the documentary.
Not the documentary. No, the dramatized version. By the way, happened really recently. I think 2016 in Newport Beach.
Just down the road from here.
Just down the road from here. And actually, what's really scary about it is the guy is really basically, we haven't even got there yet, but it appears that he is basically pure evil, like a psychopath.
Yeah.
And I think unfortunately
he's a sociopath.
Unfortunately, those people do exist in this world, and it's really frightening. And clever enough of him too that he found these women who were very Christian and I actually don't want to spoil it by telling people too much about it.
I will say that the TV series sticks very closely to the podcast.
Oh yeah,
really closely, which is unusual. Actually, they take very little leeway. They really do tell you what, because truth, as we all know, truth is stranger than fiction.
Exactly. And then the other thing we wanted to, just mention, and I don't think we're recommending, but we both went to see, and we had a young visitor in the house, so we actually, by the way, we didn't do it intentionally, but we brought our young visitor who's 19. We brought him to see the Wayback movie, the Ben Affleck story, and I don't think it was a stretch for Ben Affleck to act in this film, playing the part of an irredeemable alcoholic who does get kind of redeemed, right?
Yes, but an alcoholic who loses everything, including his wife,
his lovely wife,
who is
lovely,
and it kind of mirrors,
slightly mirrors maybe some reality that Ben might know kind of close to home.
Yes, and so when he's acting the emotional parts, I don't think there's much acting going on.
Exactly. It's it's one of those things, you're looking at him and thinking, God, he does alcoholic well, and then you're thinking, yeah.
But also, I think it's a kind of a 90-minute apology to Jennifer Garner.
Yes. It's the kind of thing. So we joked with our young friend. We kind of, after we left the cinema, we kept saying to him, "Now don't go becoming an alcoholic now. Don't become an alcoholic.
But if you do become an alcoholic, find a basketball team
to train.
To redeem, and you'll redeem yourself.
You'll redeem yourself. Yeah. So don't give up on basketball.
It has a lot of flaws. The film. It's a fair enough film.
I wouldn't recommend it.
The problem with bringing your children to it is there's a lot of F words.
Yeah, there's a lot of language.
However, anyone who does use an F word then is immediately
castigated for it.
Yeah. So it's a kind of don't become I said, if you want, no, don't become an alcoholic. It seems to be the message.
Don't become an alcoholic, which I think we, some of us already got that message. But don't become an alcoholic. And if you do become an alcoholic, definitely find the nearest basketball team that you could possibly train. But I don't think I'd recommend it. It's the kind of movie you could easily watch when it comes on Netflix or comes on TV.
A good Netflix movie.
Good Netflix film. But yeah, we wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But it's one of those ones, it's sort of like the kind of one that it's actually the kind of one you'd show in a school, except for the language, because you'd say to children, look, don't mess up your life. But all they've got to do really is read the New York Times article with Ben Affleck making his massive apology and saying that the worst mistake he ever made in his life was divorcing Jennifer Garner. So who knows what's going to happen there? But it's kind of there's something really disturbing though. There's something really disturbing, I have to say, about the whole Ben Affleck thing. And we saw him. So we live here near Venice, in Venice, but near Abbot-Kinney, and we're like walking along one day in Abbot-Kinney, and we're walking along, and you know the way somebody's walking towards you, and you're thinking, that's a very familiar looking face.
Yeah.
And
but not familiar at the same time.
But not familiar. And he's wearing these jeans and there's like money hanging out of his pocket. And as he comes closer to us, it's like, oh my God, that's Ben Affleck. And before we can say anything, because we're going to say to whoever the guy was, who was Ben Affleck, that money's hanging out of your pocket. He just made a sharp turn in, and of course went into, there's a rehabilitation centre just around the corner here. And I just think it just proves, it's a terrible thing actually. A man as talented as that, he's very, very talented, and for him to have ruined his life with alcohol, don't drink. So kids out there, don't become an alcoholic, and if you do, obviously, don't forget basketball.
Okay. Shall we play the trailer?
Let's see the trailer.
What's going on with you? What's new?
Not much.
Hate the idea of you down there by yourself all the time. Just drinking.
I'm fine. I appreciate it. But I'm fine.
Ever since I heard the howling wind.
And I suppose you're wondering why I called you over here.
I didn't need to go where a Bible went.
Our basketball coach had a heart attack the other night. We need a new coach, Dad.
So how you liking coaching so far?
Great. Just getting used to the players.
What players?
I was never sure how much of you I could let in.
I heard you're coaching basketball.
Yeah, keeps me busy. Keeps my mind off other things,
Once you settle down, baby, here your love has been.
I spent a lot of time hurting myself.
Heavenly Father,
I made a lot of bad decisions.
Don't carry other names.
I had a lot of regrets.
I know you're suffering. I just want you to be happy again, but you gotta want it too.
Well, I know about it, darling. I've been standing here.
Keep pressing, trapping, taking charges.
Heavenly Father,
you guys earned this tonight.
He's already offered safety in the end.
So yeah, I wouldn't recommend you spend your $15 going to the movies, or how much, $10, but
we paid $22.
Yes, but let's not talk about that.
We're not going to talk about that.
Yes, because
dine in.
You lie back in the big chairs. But a good Netflix movie, good Amazon Prime movie if you've got it on streaming. So
stay safe out there. We do think that this coronavirus is being overhyped. And that normal behaviour, that people should have. By the way, anytime, if you think about it here among us, right, with Magda and everything, like anytime any of us have had a flu, it's been like, yeah, I won't, I'll stay on my own. I won't be in the office with the rest of you. That's people. So normal, sensible behaviour, right?
Certainly, and the media here in America are certainly using it as a thing to bash President Trump with. They want it to be dangerous. They want it to be widespread. They want it to,
Yeah, they want the. Well, I think that really, they want the economy to crash. They want the economy to crash. It's an awful thing to be so invested in your hatred of another party that you'd actually prefer the whole thing to go down in flames, rather than see them do well.
Stay safe. Wash your hands. Stay away from people.
Wash your hands long enough to sing the happy birthday song. Apparently, that's the thing to do.
Yes,
and don't touch your face, which really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
bye.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.